Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through time into a world where ink doesn't just write words, it hides them. You find yourself in a monastery, somewhere in the damp heart of medieval Europe. The air smells of melted wax and cold limestone. A candle flickers, making the shadows dance across rows of bent figures, each cloaked in wool so coarse it could sand a wooden bench smooth. You hear it, that soft, rhythmic scratching of quills over parchment, like rain tapping against a window in slow motion. These are monks, the quiet scribes of history, and they're not just copying words, they're guarding secrets the world wasn't ready to read. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step deeper into the scriptorium, the sacred writing room. Candles line the long wooden tables, their stubs burned down to pools of amber wax. You notice the walls are covered in Latin phrases, some prayers, some warnings. The silence here is not just peaceful, it's absolute, enforced by centuries of rule. A cough, a sigh, even the accidental squeak of a stool earns a frown from the prior. Monks believed words were holy, and that copying them was a kind of prayer. Each stroke of the quill brought them closer to God, or at least closer to calluses on their fingers. It's the 12th century, give or take. No digital distractions, no background music, except the occasional drip of rain through the stone roof. You're wrapped in wool, your breath making little clouds in the chill. You sit at a desk, and before you lies a sheet of vellum, parchment made from calfskin. It's smooth, faintly yellow, and still smells faintly of the animal it once was. You grip your quill like a fragile wand and dip it into ink so black it swallows the...
Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through time into a world where ink doesn't just write words, it hides them. You find yourself in a monastery somewhere in the damp heart of medieval Europe. The air smells of melted wax and cold limestone. A candle flickers, making the shadows dance across rows of bent figures, each cloaked in wool so coarse it could sand a wooden bench smooth. You hear it, that soft, rhythmic scratching of quills over parchment, like rain tapping against a window in slow motion. These are monks, the quiet scribes of history. And they're not just copying words, they're guarding secrets the world wasn't ready to read. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step deeper into the scriptorium, the sacred writing room. Candles line the long wooden tables, their stubs burned down to pools of amber wax. You notice the walls are covered in Latin phrases, some prayers, some warnings. The silence here is not just peaceful, it's absolute, enforced by centuries of rule. A cough, a sigh, even the accidental squeak of a stool earns a frown from the prior. Monks believed words were holy and that copying them was a kind of prayer. Each stroke of the quill brought them closer to God, or at least closer to calluses on their fingers. It's the 12th century, give or take. No digital distractions, no background music except the occasional drip of rain through the stone roof. You're wrapped in wool, your breath making little clouds in the chill. You sit at a desk, and before you lies a sheet of vellum, parchment made from calfskin. It's smooth, faintly yellow, and still smells faintly of the animal it once was. You grip your quill like a fragile wand and dip it into ink so black it swallows the light. But not all ink here is equal. Some of the pots you see glimmer strangely, thin and watery, almost colorless. When one of the older monks leans over his page and writes with it, the line he draws vanishes before your eyes. You blink, thinking maybe the candle's tricking you. But no, the words are truly invisible. You stare, confused. Why would someone write what can't be seen? A sleepy chuckle from the monk beside you. It's the Lord's way of testing our patience, he whispers, though humor's barely allowed. You sense there's more to it, something secret, something deliberate. That invisible ink holds more than scripture. It holds the boundary between what's said and what's hidden. The rule here is obedience. You rise before dawn to pray. You eat a crust of bread, drink thin beer, and copy lines of psalms until your hand cramps. Evenings are for silence, so deep your own thoughts sound loud. But somewhere between prayer and fatigue, curiosity seeps in. You start to wonder what's written in those pages that fade before they're seen. Maybe it's a code, or a confession, or something heretical disguised as holiness. The abbot's footsteps echo down the corridor, steady as a metronome. Each monk straightens, pretending not to notice the faint shimmer of invisible ink drying on nearby desks. You can almost feel the tension, the thrill of rebellion hidden beneath obedience. It's like high school, but with more chanting and less deodorant. Factually, monasteries really did serve as Europe's first data centers. Long before Google Docs, these stone rooms stored every scrap of knowledge worth saving. Many scribes copied ancient Greek and Roman texts into Latin, preserving them through the Dark Ages. Without them, you wouldn't know Aristotle from a bagel. But some monks went further. They experimented with pigments, with chemical reactions, with ways to make writing vanish. A mix of lemon juice, vinegar, or milk could create lines visible only under heat. To most, it was a curiosity. To others, a way to protect dangerous thoughts. Historians still argue whether these early invisible inks were born from pure curiosity or fear. Maybe a monk simply spilled citrus on a page one day and noticed how it browned under the candle flame. Or maybe someone was trying to hide messages from church authorities. You can imagine the church's disapproval. "Brother, why does your psalm appear only when toasted over the fire?" Not an easy question to answer. You walk past a shelf lined with books chained to the wall, literally chained. Knowledge wasn't free then, it was locked up tighter than a royal vault. Each manuscript took months or years to produce. Losing one was like deleting an entire library. And yet, beneath that reverence, there was risk. Write the wrong thing, suggest a saint had flaws, or that the earth wasn't the center of everything, and you might find yourself copying penitential psalms for the rest of eternity. There's a quiet irony here. Monks devoted their lives to spreading truth, but often had to hide it to survive. Some created elaborate illuminations, tiny doodles, and coded drawings to express forbidden ideas. Others used the invisible ink itself, blending chemistry and faith in a way that would make modern conspiracy theorists proud. The candle beside you flickers lower, its light softening into gold. The monk with the invisible ink raises his page toward the flame. Slowly,
faint brown letters bloom like shy flowers. You can just make out the words, something poetic, something dangerous perhaps. Then, as quickly as it appears, he blows out the candle and the words vanish into darkness again. You sit there, realizing that the history you're watching isn't dull at all. It's a quiet rebellion, one drop of invisible ink at a time. The kind of story that makes you appreciate just how human curiosity can be, even in cloistered silence. And as the night deepens around you, the scriptorium breathes like a living creature, each monk exhaling secrets into the dim air.
You wake, or maybe you never slept, to the low tolling of a bell that shakes the air inside your ribs. Dawn hasn't broken yet. The monastery hums with a strange rhythm, like a creature stirring before sunrise. You rise from your hard wooden cot, stretch your arms, and immediately regret it. The chill bites your skin like a rude cat. The monk in the next cell coughs softly, then shuffles out, bare feet whispering on the flagstones. You follow, wrapped in a robe that smells faintly of smoke, ink, and old bread. You move through narrow corridors lit by flickering lamps, their oil nearly gone. The morning ritual begins, matins, lauds, prime. You chant, or at least you mouth the words in Latin you half understand. Ora e labora, they remind you. Pray and work. That's the deal. The Benedictine code runs your life with mechanical precision. Bells for prayer, bells for meals, bells for work, bells for sleep. Your time isn't yours, it's God's. You're basically clocked into eternity. By the time the first slice of sunlight squeezes through the high window of the scriptorium, the monks are already seated. You join them, your fingers still stiff from the cold. The same candle smoke curls upward, tracing invisible halos in the air. You inhale it and taste centuries. Today's task is predictable, copying the Psalms again. The same words you've written so often that your hand could probably do it in your sleep, and sometimes it feels like you are asleep, trapped in a dream of parchment and ink. The monotony is so heavy that the smallest anomaly, a new batch of ink, a whisper, a sneeze, feels like breaking news. A young novice slides into the seat beside you, his tonsured head still gleaming from the morning's wash. "Brother," he whispers, "Brother Gervais wrote a line backward yesterday." You stifle a smile. In a world of endless repetition, a single backward word is practically a revolution. That's how the days go here. Steady, predictable, looping like a medieval screensaver. But underneath the discipline, there's a pulse, a quiet yearning for expression, curiosity, maybe even mischief. They say monks gave up earthly pleasures, but judging by the amount of secret wine brewing behind the herb garden, that's debatable. Each task, though, has its meditative beauty. The way the ink spreads across vellum, the rhythm of quill scratching, these are their version of mindfulness. If medieval monks had yoga mats, they'd be shaped like manuscripts. You dip your quill, breathe out slowly, and begin. The ink bleeds into the page, black and sure, as though it knows more than you. And yet, there's that other pot again, the one filled with nearly invisible liquid. The same curious brother from last night carefully dips his pen, writes a few words, and smiles faintly as they disappear. You glance around, heart ticking faster, but no one reacts. Everyone pretends not to see.
It's funny how in a place built on obedience, everyone learns the art of not noticing. You wonder how many secrets these walls have absorbed. Maybe there are coded messages layered beneath the prayers, love notes, political commentary, jokes about the abbot's snoring. One historian, centuries later, will even claim that hidden among the illuminated letters of certain manuscripts are tiny caricatures of church officials. Historians still argue whether those doodles were innocent flourishes or subversive jabs drawn by bored scribes. A crow caws from the courtyard outside, startling you. The monk beside you flinches and makes the sign of the cross. "An omen," he mutters. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. After all, you're supposed to be solemn. But part of you can't help thinking maybe the crow just likes your chanting. Mid-morning comes. The smell of boiled grain seeps in from the kitchen. You chew lunch in silence, chewing being one of the few allowed noises. Meals here are less dining than more efficient refueling. The reader in the corner drones from a Latin sermon while you try to pretend barley gruel is exciting. Spoiler, it's not. Back in the scriptorium, the monotony becomes hypnotic again. Your hand moves without thought. Words become motion. Motion becomes prayer. Sometimes, as you copy the sacred text, you wonder whether faith can survive such repetition. Maybe that's why some monks invented invisible ink, not to hide blasphemy, but to feel something different, to bring a spark of creativity into endless routine. A historian in the future might call it proto-science, experimentation within the safety of devotion. The monks didn't know chemistry the way we do, but they had curiosity, and curiosity is the first ingredient of discovery. They noticed reactions, ink that darkened under heat, faded in sunlight, or changed with vinegar. For them, every ink pot was both a prayer and an experiment. You pause to stretch your neck. The abbot's shadow passes across the doorway, tall, slow, imposing. His presence makes the air colder. He says nothing, but the message is clear. Stay diligent, stay quiet. He leaves, and only then do you realize you've been holding your breath. You exhale, relieved, and almost laugh. Even holiness has supervisors. By evening, the light has turned golden. Through the small window, you glimpse the orchard beyond the walls, rows of apple trees swaying in the wind. You imagine a life beyond, people talking, laughing, eating food that actually tastes like something. But here you are, bound by parchment and duty, writing invisible words that might never be read. And strangely, it's comforting. The silence, the repetition, it becomes its own kind of peace. Fact check. Monastic life in the Middle Ages truly was defined by rigid routine and discipline. The rule of Saint Benedict, written in the 6th century, dictated nearly every aspect of daily existence. Monks woke up before dawn, prayed 7 times a day, and spent long hours copying texts or working the land. It sounds austere, but that rhythm created stability in a chaotic world. Historians still argue whether this strict order suppressed individuality or preserved civilization itself. As night falls, the last bell tolls for Compline, the final prayer. You file out with the others, your footsteps echoing softly. The scriptorium lies behind you, dark and still, but you swear you can still see faint shapes of letters glowing in the candle smoke, words that refuse to disappear completely.
The next morning arrives on a breath of mist.
You wake to the bell again, always the bell, your personal medieval alarm clock with no snooze button. The chill has teeth this time. You pull your robe tighter and shuffle back toward the scriptorium, where the candles are already lit and the air smells faintly of vinegar and smoke. It's the smell of knowledge, or at least of people trying very hard to make it permanent. You take your seat at the long wooden desk, the same one you used yesterday and the day before that. The same quill, the same pot of ink, the same eternal quiet. Except this morning, Brother Aldwin, who always hums off-key hymns when he thinks no one's listening, is nowhere to be seen. In his place sits an older monk with a face carved by patience. His name, you recall, is Brother Odo, the man everyone whispers about. He doesn't look up when you sit down. He's stirring something in a small cup, the motion slow and deliberate, like he's mixing a potion. The liquid looks odd, not black, not brown, almost clear with a faint shimmer. You lean slightly closer, trying not to be obvious. "Curious, are we?" he murmurs, voice low enough to make the hairs on your arm stand up. You freeze. He chuckles quietly, a sound like gravel being stirred in a bowl. "It's all right," he says. "Curiosity is a sin until it isn't." You don't quite know what to say, so you just nod like someone pretending to understand Latin conjugations. He dips his quill, writes something across a scrap of parchment, then blows on it. You see nothing. The page looks blank. "Invisible," he says with a faint smile, "but only for a while." He holds it over a candle flame. Careful, not too close. And suddenly, brown letters bloom across the surface like shy ghosts coming out to play. You almost gasp. That's when you realize you're witnessing magic, or maybe early chemistry, depending on how you label wonder. Later historians will identify these mixtures as lemon juice, onion juice, milk, or diluted vinegar, substances that contain organic acids which brown when heated. To the monks, though, it was divine mystery. Ink that vanished and returned felt like scripture itself, hidden truth revealed by light. "Why?" you ask quietly. "Why write words that disappear?" Odo leans back. "Because not all words are for every eye." Then, almost playfully, he adds, "And sometimes, brother, it's just fun." That last word surprises you. Monks aren't supposed to have fun. But you see a glint in his eye, a kind of mischief that makes you wonder how many of these old men hide humor under their hoods. He dips his pen again and slides the parchment toward you. "Your turn." You hesitate, then write, "Ave Maria." It looks like you've written on air. You hold the page to the candle, and slowly the words emerge, ghostly and golden brown. It feels like creation, like you've summoned something from nothing. You can't help but smile. Brother Odo nods. "See? Even silence has ink if you know how to look." That sentence stays with you all day. You catch yourself repeating it under your breath as you copy psalms and chant prayers. The idea that something invisible could exist between the lines, that there are hidden messages in everything, feels intoxicating. Of course, the church might not approve. The church rarely approves of anything that looks like fun and science combined. But you can't stop thinking about it. You begin to wonder how many of the ancient manuscripts you've copied contain hidden messages beneath the surface. Maybe there are entire parallel stories written in lemon juice and hope. Historians still argue whether monks used invisible ink primarily for secrecy or play. Some claim it was a way to correspond during times of tension, when theological debates could cost lives. Others believe it was used to hide private notes, jokes, or coded prayers meant only for trusted readers. A few fringe scholars even suggest it was a meditative act, writing words meant only for God's eyes. Whatever the truth, it adds a spark to the monotony. You find yourself more awake, more curious, and that curiosity begins to spread like ink through cloth. Soon, a few others whisper about Odo's ghostwriting. A brother named Simeon claims he once saw words appear on a page during Mass. Another insists Odo is an alchemist. A third says he's possessed by the Holy Spirit, which honestly sounds like a convenient way to justify weird hobbies. During midday break, you find Odo again in the garden, sitting beside the herb beds. He's plucking rosemary leaves into a small bowl. For scent, you ask. He smiles. For memory and for ink. He crushes the leaves, mixes them with vinegar and a drop of something metallic, iron maybe. Every plant leaves a trace, he murmurs. Some traces fade, some never do. You realize he's talking about more than ink. By evening, you're back in the scriptorium, candlelight dancing over rows of bowed heads. You try writing invisible words again, heart pounding. Just a few letters, nothing risky. You wait until no one's looking, then slip the page into your robe. Maybe tomorrow, when you're alone, you'll hold it to the flame and see what secrets you've made. The idea fills you with a strange thrill, like a child sneaking a cookie before dinner, except your cookie could technically count as heresy. As the final bell tolls and you head toward the dormitory, you glance over your shoulder. Odo is still at his desk, still writing, the faintest smile ghosting across his face. His page glows briefly in the firelight, then fades to nothing. You realize the monastery isn't as quiet as it seems. Beneath the chants and prayers, something stirs. Curiosity, creativity, rebellion. Whatever it is, it hums just beneath the surface, waiting for the right heat to appear. And for the first time in a long while, you're not just a copyist, you're a witness to something invisible that refuses to stay unseen.
You rise earlier than usual, restless, your mind still glowing with that invisible script from last night. The bell hasn't even rung yet, but the monastery never truly sleeps. Someone is always praying, someone is always sweeping, someone is always breathing ink and candle smoke. You slip into the scriptorium before dawn, hoping to find Odo again. But his desk is empty. His quill rests in its holder, a thin strand of dried ink clinging to the nib like a memory that doesn't want to let go. You almost sit, then notice something odd, a small folded scrap of parchment tucked under the ink pot. Your fingers hesitate. Touching another monk's work without permission is basically monastic sin number 7, somewhere between pride and sleeping during Vespers. But curiosity wins. Of course it does. You unfold it, and there it is. Nothing. Blank parchment. Except, maybe not. You tilt it toward the window, catch the faintest sheen of something brushed across the fibers.
You bring it closer to the candle, heart quickening. Slowly, faint words emerge, brown and trembling. Guard what is hidden. That's all. 3 words that feel like both warning and invitation. You're not sure if this is a test, a lesson, or a trap, but it's enough to ignite a quiet storm inside you. Over breakfast, the monks murmur about strange rumors, a brother caught writing letters that weren't in the scriptures, notes that only appeared when held near heat. The abbot is displeased. He believes mischief threatens sanctity, and sanctity, after all, is the monastery's only real currency. You listen in silence, spooning your thin porridge, pretending you're not the one with a secret message tucked inside your sleeve. Later that morning, you're assigned to copy a section of St. Augustine's Confessions. You try to focus, but every curve of every letter feels like a doorway. Augustine wrote about hidden sins, invisible grace, unseen truth. And now so are you. The irony isn't lost on you. Your quill trembles slightly as you dip it in the ordinary ink, but beside it sits a second cup, one that looks slightly different, paler, thicker, like broth instead of paint. You know Odo's recipe well enough by now. Lemon juice, crushed herbs, and a whisper of iron salts. You glance around. Everyone's busy copying. The air is filled with rhythmic scratching and the occasional sigh. You dip, write, watch nothing appear. The invisible line glows faintly when wet, then vanishes completely. The thrill is back, curling through your chest like smoke. You write again, this time smaller, between 2 Latin lines. Curiosity is not sin. It is sight. You lean back and breathe, the way one might after carving graffiti on the walls of heaven. Hours pass, the pages pile up, sacred words atop secret ones. You begin to wonder how many others have done the same. Surely you're not the first. Monks were many things: scholars, gardeners, brewers, astronomers, and sometimes quiet rebels. Historians still argue whether invisible ink served purely practical purposes or carried deeper meaning. Some believe it protected dangerous theology, ideas too progressive for the Church's liking. Others say it was used to mark ownership of manuscripts or encode internal correspondence between monasteries. A few even suggest that during times of censorship, monks hid entire banned passages this way, waiting for safer centuries to resurrect them. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. These weren't just words. They were acts of faith or defiance. That night, Odo finds you in the cloister. The air smells of wet stone and lavender. He carries no candle, yet somehow you can see his face clearly in the moonlight. He asks, "Did you read it?" You nod. Guard what is hidden. He smiles faintly. Then you understand. Understand what? That not every truth belongs in daylight. You think of the parchment beneath your robe, the ghost words blooming under heat. Is this wrong, you ask? Perhaps, he says softly, but what is holiness without the courage to test it? You stand together in silence. The only sound is the wind through the courtyard vines and the faint drip of rain from the roof. Finally, Odo adds, "Once, long ago, I wrote something invisible on a letter to another abbey, a warning, a kindness. It saved lives." Your mind races. Saved from what? He doesn't elaborate. There are always eyes that should not see, ears that should not hear, but ink remembers, even when it hides. Then he leaves, his robe whispering against the flagstones.
You're left alone with the echo of his words and the uneasy feeling that your monastery's quiet devotion hides more than prayer. The next day, you're assigned to illuminate the margins of a psalter, a fancy way of saying, add gold leaf to make someone richer look holier. You trace vines, angels, beasts, each curling toward the edges like life trying to escape the frame. Then, on a whim, you slip a message beneath the gilding. 3 invisible letters no one will notice. Vide, Latin for look. It feels dangerous. It feels wonderful. You tell yourself it's harmless, but you can't ignore how your pulse flutters whenever a fellow monk passes behind you. That night, as you tuck into your straw mattress, you wonder how far this could go. Could entire books hide invisible gospels? Could lost heresies survive under psalms? You know Odo's grin, the way the hidden words bloomed like secrets longing to be confessed. Historians still debate whether monasteries truly housed invisible libraries, collections of double-written manuscripts containing both pious text and coded rebellion. Some modern ultraviolet studies suggest faint traces beneath ink layers in certain medieval books. Others dismiss it as accidental bleed-through. But you, sitting in the flickering dark, know better. And as your eyelids grow heavy, you realize the monastery itself feels like a manuscript. One text visible, one hidden. Tomorrow, the bells will ring again. You'll copy, chant, and obey. But beneath it all, the invisible ink will keep breathing, like truth asleep under parchment, waiting for the right flame to wake it.
The bell strikes again, and with it comes another day of disciplined monotony, if you ignore the fact that your heart is now pulsing like a drum under all that holy silence. You trudge toward the scriptorium, robe brushing the cold stones, half dreading and half craving whatever Odo might show you next. The morning light slices through stained glass, painting the air with color. It makes the dust motes look like tiny planets orbiting unseen truths. Around you, monks settle into their places, some muttering psalms, others rubbing their wrists as if warding off the cramps that come from eternal writing. You inhale the familiar mix of parchment, beeswax, and human fatigue. Then your gaze drifts to the tools, so ordinary yet so loaded with history. The quills lie like feathers shed from tame angels. The inkpots shimmer with layers of sediment black as confession and twice as heavy. Small knives for scraping errors gleam beside blocks of pumice stone used to polish rough parchment. Even the sand used to dry ink sparkles faintly in the light. You touch one of the quills gently. It's goose feather, stiff at the base, soft at the tip. You imagine how many words this fragile object has birthed, how many prayers, how many secrets. You remember Odo saying, "Every plant leaves a trace." Maybe every feather does too. As you prepare your station, Odo appears beside you without sound, because of course he does. He was probably a cat in another life. "You're learning quickly," he says, peering over your shoulder, "but you don't yet know your ink." He gestures for you to follow. You slip out quietly, down a side corridor few use. It smells like damp earth and candle soot. The passage opens into a small alcove you've never seen before.
Here, rows of bottles line the wall. Glass, clay, even horn flasks. Each holds a different shade of potential. Odo picks one up. Oak gall, he explains, a parasite's gift. When an insect wounds an oak leaf, the tree defends itself by growing a gall, full of tannin. We grind it, mix it with iron salts, and behold, black ink. He swirls the bottle, and the liquid shimmers darkly, catching the light like a captive storm. He hands it to you. But this, he says, pulling another vial, is not for every monk. The fluid inside is pale gold, almost translucent. Vinegar, rosemary, and alum, invisible until fire or time reveals it. You hold the bottle as if it contains sunlight. Every ink, Odo says softly, is a choice between permanence and secrecy. You nod, though you're still caught on the smell, the mix of herbs, sourness, and something metallic beneath. It's oddly comforting. Do all monasteries make these? You ask. He chuckles. Most pretend not to, but every abbey has someone who knows more than he should. He sets out a few more tools, a bronze pestle, a mortar, scraps of parchment already stained with trial markings. You'll need to grind evenly, else your words blot or fade. The ink must flow like thought, steady, silent, certain. You grind. The pestle makes a slow rhythm, and you feel like you're part of something ancient and unspoken. Historians still argue whether monks like Odo were early chemists or merely artisans of survival. Some claim their ink recipes helped birth the foundations of modern chemistry, experiments with acids, salts, and metallic compounds centuries before the term science existed. Others dismiss it as superstition wrapped in habit. Either way, the line between faith and curiosity has never been thinner. When the mixture is ready, Odo hands you a fresh quill. He says, "Try it, but remember, this ink listens." You laugh nervously. Listens? He says, "Every word you write disappears, but not from the world. It's still there, waiting for the right light to see it." You dip the quill, write your name, watch it vanish. It's unsettling, like whispering into someone's ear and hearing no response. But there's beauty in that too, a kind of humility. Odo smiles, satisfied. "There," he says, "now you've joined the silent conversation." You spend the rest of the day cataloging the inks, labeling jars in careful Latin, the ordinary black, the rusty brown, the faint green brewed from copper vinegar. The invisible one, of course, stays unlabeled. Its mystery, part of its protection. You realize that each ingredient carries meaning. Oak for strength, iron for truth, vinegar for purification. Every tool, every color, a sermon in liquid form. Writing in this world isn't just record, it's ritual. That night, as you copy another psalm, your thoughts wander. What if the ink could talk back? What if every invisible word has already been read by God, or history, or both? The candle trembles in a draught, and the flame's glow reminds you of revelation, light revealing what was hidden. You chuckle quietly.
If anyone heard your thoughts, they'd probably assign you extra prayers, maybe 2 rosaries and a lecture about pride. But for now, it's just you, your quill, and the comforting hum of obscurity. When evening prayers end, Odo lingers near the altar, dipping his fingers in the holy water. You notice faint stains on his skin, like shadows of old ink. Do they fade, you ask? He raises his hand, studies the faint discoloration. Never completely, he says. The ink marks you too, even the invisible kind. And somehow you understand exactly what he means. As you leave the chapel, you glance down at your own fingertips, wondering how many invisible words are already written there, stories you don't even realize you're carrying.
The morning arrives with mist curling around the monastery walls, soft and persistent, as if the world itself were hesitating to wake. You pull on your robe and trudge down the familiar stone corridors, feeling the damp seep through your sandals. Even the air smells different today, sharper, as if it knows you've begun to glimpse secrets others ignore. The scriptorium is quieter than usual. Candles flicker in the pre-dawn gloom, making shadows dance across the walls, elongating faces and manuscripts alike. You take your seat at the long table where your parchment awaits. Today, your task is repetition, copying a text you've memorized, the Psalms flowing from your quill almost automatically. But you can't focus on the holy words. Your mind drifts toward Odo and the invisible inks, toward the idea of messages that exist and yet remain hidden. Suddenly, a slight movement catches your eye. Brother Simeon tiptoes behind a row of desks, carrying a small wooden box. He glances around as if the very air is listening. You watch, heart pumping, as he opens the box and reveals a tiny collection of vials, each one glowing faintly in the morning light. Lemon juice, milk, onion juice, even honey dissolved in vinegar. Substances he claims can become invisible ink, he whispers, leaning toward you conspiratorially. Curiosity kills no one. At least, not yet. You grin, feeling the adrenaline of the forbidden. Together you experiment on scraps of parchment, testing heat, sunlight, friction, even candle smoke. The words vanish and reappear like shy spirits, teasing you with the idea of hidden knowledge. The monotony of the scriptorium melts away in these small bursts of alchemy. Historians still argue whether monks like Simeon were simply indulging childish pranks or carefully protecting sensitive information. Some suggest invisible ink preserved correspondence during times of war, plague, or ecclesiastical strife. Others insist it was nothing more than harmless experimentation, scribbles for amusement in a world obsessed with repetition. Either way, the thrill of discovery electrifies your fingers as the quill scratches across the page. By midday, whispers have spread. Monks gather subtly, casting furtive glances at the invisible letters that appear only when exposed to light or heat. Some shake their heads disapprovingly. Others chuckle silently, recalling their own youthful experiments. It becomes clear the monastery holds a network of unspoken curiosity, a delicate rebellion against the rigid structure of daily devotion. You steal a glance at the abbot. He sits at his usual place, reviewing texts with meticulous precision, eyes darting occasionally to the scriptorium floor.
You wonder if he suspects or if he simply tolerates it, perhaps seeing invisible ink as an extension of divine mystery rather than mischief. During Vespers, you notice the flickering candlelight revealing more than just shadows. Letters from earlier experiments seem to dance on the parchment, tiny specters of words, visible only to those willing to look closely. You think about the countless manuscripts lying hidden in abbeys across Europe, messages layered beneath prayers, songs, and illuminations, communication designed to transcend time. Later, in the dormitory, you experiment further. Heat, friction, acidic drops from lemon juice all coax hidden words to emerge. Each revelation feels like unlocking a secret room within the monastery, a private space where faith, curiosity, and creativity intersect. You pause occasionally, listening to the wind through the windows, letting the thrill of invisibility mix with the calm night. By candlelight, your quill dances across the page, invisible letters forming silent stories. You think of Odo's words, every word disappears, but not from the world. The truth lingers, waiting for the right observer, the right spark to breathe it back to life. You realize that the monastery is more than stone, candle smoke, and chanting. It's a living manuscript. Every corridor, every corner, every quiet glance hides potential messages, a symphony of invisible words vibrating just beneath perception. And tonight, for a brief moment, you are part of that quiet miracle.
The next morning, you wake to an unusually pale sun spilling through the narrow windows, dust motes hovering like tiny planets in the shafts of light. You pull on your robe and move through the cloisters, the stones cool beneath your feet, damp from the night's mist. Everything smells faintly of wet stone, candle smoke, and a lingering sweetness from the herb garden. You pause for a moment to breathe it in. The monastery has a way of embedding itself into your senses, wrapping you in layers of time and ritual. Inside the scriptorium, the familiar hum of scratching quills fills the air. You take your usual seat, but today, a small parchment lies already waiting for you. It's unmarked, but the texture is oddly soft, almost velvety. You recognize the subtle signature, Odo's handiwork. Curiosity surges. You pick up your quill and dip it carefully into the pale, invisible ink he left for you. You begin copying psalms mechanically at first, letting the rhythm of the hand guide your thoughts. Then, almost unconsciously, you start to experiment. Slightly heavier strokes, minute curves, letters curling differently than the original text. The invisible ink reacts differently than before, responding to heat from your fingers, the tiny drafts in the room. Slowly, faint letters appear where you least expect them, a delicate map of secret messages forming on the page. By mid-morning, Brother Aldwin appears. He moves silently, watching over your shoulder. He doesn't say a word, just nods slightly, as if approving your method, his eyes sparkling with the shared secret of what's unfolding. You realize that in the rigid, repetitive structure of monastic life, these small, hidden experiments have created a quiet camaraderie. Even the most serious monks indulge in secret in this gentle rebellion. Historians still argue whether these experiments were purely playful or if they served deeper purposes: communication during times of censorship,
subtle political commentary, or even spiritual exercises intended to reveal hidden truths. You, sitting in the candlelit quiet, feel as though you are touching history itself, the pulse of centuries coursing through your fingers. As the day stretches on, your focus drifts to the faint shimmer of parchment stacked in the corners of the scriptorium. How many layers of history are hidden beneath the visible texts, waiting for the right moment to emerge? Could the words you write today be discovered centuries later, puzzling scholars and inspiring curiosity in ways you cannot imagine? During the afternoon meal, conversation among the monks touches on mundane matters, harvests, weather, repairs, but your mind remains on invisible words. You imagine entire conversations held in secret, entire lives chronicled in inks that only reveal themselves to those patient enough to uncover them. Even the abbot seems a part of this silent network, moving between tables with an unspoken understanding of the delicate balance between obedience and curiosity. By evening, the scriptorium has emptied, leaving only you and Odo. He watches as you carefully lift your parchment to the candle flame. Letters bloom like shy blossoms in spring, brown, delicate, precise. The thrill of revelation never fades, even after days of practice. He speaks softly, almost a whisper. The invisible is never truly gone. It waits, always waiting for the light that understands it. You nod, feeling the weight of those words. They resonate beyond ink and parchment, touching the edges of your imagination. Night falls, the monastery quiets, the scent of herbs drifts from the garden, candlelight flickers over worn stones, and for the first time, you understand that invisibility is not absence, it's potential. Each letter, each message, each hidden thought is a seed waiting for someone patient, curious, or daring enough to watch it bloom.
The next day, you wake before dawn, drawn to the scriptorium by a mixture of excitement and habit. The air is crisp, carrying a faint scent of dew and stone, and the monastery seems to hold its breath. You trudge along the corridors, your robe whispering against the flagstones, and enter the scriptorium, where the familiar scent of ink, wax, and old parchment greets you. It's comforting and intoxicating all at once. Odo is already there, hunched over a desk with a tiny quill in hand. He looks up and nods silently, his eyes crinkling in quiet amusement. Today, he has a special task for you, a manuscript that is rumored to contain marginalia from multiple generations of monks. Some notes visible, others long hidden in invisible ink. The idea sends a thrill through you. It's a treasure hunt across centuries without ever leaving the room. You begin examining the pages, running your fingers gently over the parchment. Some of the ink seems ordinary, black, brown, familiar, but beneath, faint outlines glimmer under the candlelight. You tilt the pages, holding them near the small flame, and words gradually reveal themselves, like ghosts of thoughts past.
Each line feels like a conversation across time, the author's intent whispering softly to you through centuries of careful concealment. Historians still debate whether marginal notes were intended for secrecy or as playful commentary. Some argue that monks left clues for future readers, creating a layered history of hidden messages. Others suggest it was simply a practical method to conserve space or annotate texts without disrupting the main body. Either way, the thrill of uncovering these invisible layers is undeniable. As you copy some lines in invisible ink yourself, experimenting with different mixtures, you realize the subtle complexity of each method. Lemon juice reacts differently than milk. Vinegar brings a warmer hue under heat. Onion juice has a peculiar sharpness that makes letters emerge suddenly, almost angrily, as if eager to be noticed. Each substance carries its own personality, and you become fascinated with the alchemy of it all. By mid-morning, other monks pass through, their eyes occasionally flicking toward you. Some smile knowingly, others seem oblivious. You feel a quiet camaraderie forming, a silent acknowledgement of shared secrets. Even in this rigid environment, curiosity and subtle mischief thrive. During your break, you watch as sunlight streams through the stained glass, illuminating patterns that seem almost magical. Tiny letters hidden in the corners of the manuscripts shimmer in response to the light. You catch yourself smiling. These are not just words, but playful echoes of centuries-old creativity, and you are now part of that hidden tradition. In the afternoon, Odo sets a challenge. Write a short message in invisible ink that must convey both meaning and beauty. You carefully craft a simple phrase, dipping your quill repeatedly, adjusting pressure, experimenting with strokes. When you hold it near the candle, the words appear faintly, dancing in the soft glow. You feel a quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from mastery and discovery blended together. As evening falls and the monastery quiets, you reflect on the day. Invisible ink is more than secrecy. It's a bridge between minds and eras, a gentle rebellion against time itself. You realize the monastery is alive in a way most never notice. Each hidden word, a pulse in its silent heart.
The night settles like a soft cloak over the monastery. You trudge along the cloisters, the chill air brushing against your face, carrying the scent of wet stone and fading herbs. Candles flicker faintly in the windows of the scriptorium, inviting you to step inside and continue the quiet work that has become your obsession. You push open the heavy door and are greeted by the familiar, comforting smell of parchment and ink. Odo is already at his desk, quill in hand, but he doesn't speak immediately. Instead, he gestures for you to sit across from him. In silence, he spreads several sheets of parchment in front of you, each covered by barely visible writing. You lean in, eyes adjusting to the dim candlelight. Slowly, letters shimmer into existence as the heat from the candle coaxes them to life.
Words from monks long gone seem to whisper in the still air. You realize that these sheets are more than simple instructions or prayers. They are little stories, small confessions, private jokes, and tiny rebellions carefully hidden within the pages. Some words are straightforward, others cryptic, almost like riddles meant to challenge the reader's wits. Historians still debate whether these marginal notes were purely practical or if they served as a secret intellectual culture within the monasteries. Either way, it's mesmerizing to see centuries of thought shimmering faintly beneath the visible text. You take a quill, dipping it into the pale mixture Odo prepared. Today, he encourages experimentation, blending subtle herbs to create shades that respond differently under heat. You write a line in tiny, precise letters, then lean back and watch as it disappears into the parchment. Your pulse quickens. It's like sending a secret into the void, knowing it is safe, but still alive, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Later, you notice a small parchment tucked behind a heavy tome. It appears blank, but as you gently touch it, faint letters shimmer faintly. You carefully lift it closer to the candle, and the writing becomes readable. A small poem, slightly humorous, commenting on the monotony of the monks' lives and their obsession with order. You laugh quietly to yourself, imagining the author chuckling centuries ago while hiding this playful critique. By mid-afternoon, a subtle network of curiosity has emerged in the scriptorium. Monks occasionally glance at each other, sharing silent understanding, acknowledging their shared secret without uttering a word. Even the abbot seems to allow these experiments, perhaps understanding that curiosity nurtures the mind, even within the strict routines of monastic life. As the evening bell rings, signaling the end of work, you carefully store your invisible ink messages. Each page feels like a tiny seed, holding the potential to communicate across time. The weight of centuries presses gently against your chest as you contemplate the unseen layers of history hidden within these manuscripts. You pause for a moment at the doorway, looking out into the quiet cloister. The wind carries a faint rustle of leaves, and the monastery seems to breathe with a gentle, secretive life. Invisible ink is not just about hiding words. It is about preserving thought, about connecting the past with the present in ways few will ever notice. And tonight, as you close the scriptorium door behind you, you carry that secret quietly within yourself.
The morning arrives, heavy with fog that clings to the monastery walls, wrapping the world outside in a soft gray blanket. You trudge along the cobblestones to the scriptorium, your robe brushing against damp moss on the edges of the path. Each step echoes faintly, a reminder that the stones beneath your feet have borne monks' weight for centuries, and perhaps, just perhaps, have heard secrets whispered long ago. Inside, the familiar scent of parchment, beeswax, and ink envelops you. Odo is at his desk, hunched over a thin sheet of vellum, quill dancing delicately across the page. He doesn't look up as you approach, but you can feel his attention. The quiet is punctuated only by the scratch of quills, the faint rustle of parchment, and the distant tolling of the morning bell. Today, Odo presents a new challenge. Replicate a letter written entirely in invisible ink, intended to convey a subtle warning to a neighboring abbey. You hesitate,
quill hovering over the pale mixture. The idea of sending messages unseen feels almost magical, as though you are crafting something that exists in two worlds simultaneously, present and hidden, visible and secret. You dip your quill carefully, the tip soaking up the translucent liquid. The ink is cool, slightly viscous, and faintly metallic in scent. You begin to write, each stroke deliberate, careful not to press too hard. The words vanish into the parchment as soon as they are formed. You glance at Odo, who nods approvingly, his eyes twinkling with the quiet joy of shared understanding. Historians still argue whether the use of invisible ink in medieval monasteries was widespread or merely the eccentric hobby of a few particularly curious monks. Some suggest it served as a protective measure during times of political tension or external threats. Others believe it was a playful exploration of chemical reactions and alchemy, an innocent game cloaked in secrecy. You, sitting there with your quill and vellum, feel both possibilities at once, a blend of necessity and curiosity. By midday, you've mastered several methods of revealing the hidden letters: heat from a candle, exposure to sunlight, and the friction of rubbing with a warm hand. Each method produces a slightly different effect. The letters darken, shimmer, or glow faintly, like whispers of the past emerging just for you. You pause occasionally to marvel at the tiny transformations, realizing how delicate and precise this craft truly is. During the afternoon, other monks drift into the scriptorium, some observing your work, others quietly attempting their own invisible compositions. There is a sense of silent collaboration, an unspoken community of curiosity. Even the abbot's eyes occasionally flick toward your desk, perhaps approving, perhaps merely curious himself. As evening descends, the scriptorium grows dim, candlelight flickering across parchment and desk. You finish your practice letter, and holding it near the flame, watch the words shimmer into life, then fade again as the heat subsides. The invisible message remains, unseen by the casual observer, yet fully alive, a secret folded into the rhythm of the monastery.
The next dawn filters softly through the narrow windows, painting the scriptorium in pale gold. You shuffle inside, your fingers brushing over the cold stone walls as the morning chill clings to your robe. The scent of wet parchment and candle smoke is stronger today, mingling with a faint tang of iron from the ink. Your footsteps echo lightly, the quiet punctuated only by distant bird calls and the occasional scraping of quills. Odo is already at his desk, a small tray of vials before him. He glances up and offers a subtle nod, gesturing for you to approach. Today, he wants you to experiment with a layered composition, writing one message atop another in invisible ink, each layer reacting differently to light, heat, or time. The idea is dizzying but thrilling. The notion that multiple secrets could coexist on the same page, each awaiting discovery under the correct conditions. You begin by preparing the inks, grinding powders, mixing liquids, and testing a few drops on scrap parchment. Lemon juice, milk,
and a faint trace of iron sulfate each respond in their own way. Some reveal words slowly under gentle heat. Others require candle flame to appear fully. You marvel at how each substance carries personality, almost like the monks themselves, subtle, patient, and capable of surprising insight. Historians still argue whether such layered techniques were meant to protect sensitive information or if they were a playful intellectual exercise, an art form to pass the long hours of monastic life. You sense both truths simultaneously. Necessity gave birth to innovation, and curiosity nurtured artistry. Hours pass in a gentle blur. You write carefully, then test the layers, watching words shimmer faintly, then disappear, then re-emerge under precise conditions. A pattern emerges, a quiet rhythm between writing, revealing, and observing. Each moment feels deliberate, as if the universe itself were measuring your patience, rewarding your attention to detail. By mid-afternoon, Brother Simeon wanders over with a small notebook. He shows you examples of layered ink from manuscripts long thought ordinary. Tiny words overlap in impossible configurations, each a secret conversation spanning decades. You are struck by the subtle humor in some of them. A monk complaining quietly about the abbey cat, another joking about the poor quality of yesterday's bread. The monastery is alive with hidden life, even in the most mundane moments. Odo smiles at your fascination, and without words, he gestures to a hidden alcove where more vials and parchment await. You spend the rest of the day testing, layering, and marveling at the delicate interactions of the inks. The time seems to bend. Hours slip past unnoticed, measured only by the slow flicker of candlelight and the gentle scratch of quills. As evening draws near, you step back and hold your layered manuscript up to the light. Words appear and fade in a delicate dance, letters interlacing across time and space. You realize that invisibility is not just a technique, it is a meditation, a quiet communion with history and curiosity itself. The monastery has become a living, breathing manuscript, each secret, each letter, part of a hidden symphony. You leave the scriptorium with a quiet smile. The corridors feel warmer, charged with the whispers of hidden messages, the echo of centuries of silent creativity. In this sanctuary of stone and ink, even invisibility has a presence, a life, a pulse, and a story waiting to be read.
The morning air is unusually crisp as you make your way to the scriptorium, mist curling around the cloisters like slow, deliberate fingers. Your robe brushes against the cold stone, damp from the lingering dew, and the faint scent of herbs from the garden clings to your senses. Each step echoes in the quiet halls, a reminder of the countless monks who have walked these same stones, leaving their invisible marks in ways you are only beginning to appreciate. Inside, Odo is already at his desk, carefully examining a worn manuscript. He gestures for you to sit beside him, a small vial of pale liquid resting between you. Today's lesson? Using invisible ink for subtle commentary on existing texts, a technique meant to leave insights, humor, or corrections for future readers. The idea sends a thrill through you.
It's like having a secret conversation with the past and the future simultaneously. You begin by preparing your ink, a delicate mixture of lemon juice and a trace of gallnut extract, each component chosen for its subtle reaction under heat. Your quill dips into the liquid, leaving only a faint trace as you write. The words vanish almost immediately, yet you feel their presence, as if they exist in another dimension of the manuscript. Historians still debate the intent behind these hidden annotations. Some argue they were practical, notes to clarify or correct text, while others suggest they were playful intellectual exercises, a way for monks to engage with the material creatively without disturbing its formal structure. You feel both possibilities as you continue, your hand moving with precision and curiosity. By mid-morning, you experiment with layering commentary, a line of visible text followed by an invisible quip, a small joke about the monotony of copying psalms, or a subtle critique of the abbey's routine. The letters respond to heat, to light, even to the pressure of your hand, revealing themselves slowly, teasing you with each tiny revelation. It feels like a dance, a collaboration between you and the centuries-old manuscript. Other monks wander through, casting glances that range from amusement to quiet curiosity. You sense a network of unspoken understanding forming, a hidden community of playful experimentation within the strict routine of monastic life. Even the abbot seems aware, moving between desks with the faintest smile, perhaps appreciating the subtle balance between devotion and creativity. In the afternoon, you pause to examine previous experiments. Tiny words, notes left by monks long gone, shimmer faintly in candlelight. Some are humorous, some cryptic, and some deeply contemplative. You marvel at the way these hidden layers create a quiet dialogue across time, a testament to the enduring curiosity and ingenuity of the human mind. As evening approaches, you carefully store your manuscripts. Each sheet holds potential secrets, whispers of thought preserved in invisibility. The monastery feels alive in a way that goes beyond prayer and routine, pulsing with hidden stories and quiet laughter. You realize that invisibility is more than technique. It's a gentle rebellion, a meditation, and a bridge across time, connecting you to countless unseen voices who walk these halls before you.
The day begins with a soft drizzle tapping against the monastery roof, creating a gentle rhythm that blends with the occasional scratch of quills from within the scriptorium. You trudge along the damp cloisters, feeling the cool stone beneath your sandals. The air smells of wet moss, herbs, and faint smoke from the candles still burning in some corners. It is a quiet world, punctuated only by subtle sounds, and it draws you in, pulling you toward the familiar comfort of parchment and ink. Inside, Odo greets you with a mischievous grin, holding a thin stack of parchments. Today, he wants you to explore experimental inks that respond to both heat and chemical interaction. Some combinations reveal text under candlelight, others only when exposed to a mild acidic solution. You realize this is no longer mere secrecy, it is chemical magic, a precise, delicate art that requires patience and observation. You begin preparing your mixtures, carefully testing small drops on scrap parchment. Lemon juice, milk, and faint traces of iron all behave differently, their reactions unpredictable, yet fascinating. You dip your quill, writing slowly,
savoring the moment each invisible word appears and disappears under your watchful eye. The process is meditative. Your attention is total, your mind calm but alert, attuned to the subtle transformations unfolding before you. Historians still debate whether monks shared these experimental inks as part of formal teaching or whether it was an informal, almost secretive practice passed among the curious. Whatever the answer, you feel privileged to participate in this delicate intersection of science, art, and devotion. By late morning, you are layering words atop one another, blending different inks in a single composition. The resulting text is almost alive. Letters emerge and fade, overlap and shift, depending on temperature and light. You pause occasionally, listening to the soft patter of rain outside, letting the gentle rhythm soothe you as you continue your work. Other monks pass by, some peeking briefly at your parchment. You sense curiosity sparking in them, the silent acknowledgement of shared wonder. Even the abbot seems aware, occasionally casting a quiet glance, perhaps approving, perhaps simply appreciating the harmony between obedience and exploration. In the afternoon, you experiment with notes meant for future generations, small instructions, jokes, observations hidden within layers of invisible text. The thrill of sending messages that may never be discovered fully captures your imagination. You imagine monks centuries from now stumbling upon these hidden layers, laughing or marveling at the thoughtfulness embedded in every stroke. As evening descends, candlelight flickers across the parchment, revealing letters in soft and warm hues. You lean back and observe, marveling at how invisibility transforms the ordinary act of writing into a dance across time. The monastery, so often associated with silence and discipline, feels alive with hidden conversations, secret humor, and the quiet pulse of curiosity. Tonight, you leave the scriptorium with the realization that invisibility is more than technique. It is an intimate connection to history, a meditation, and a playful rebellion all at once.
The following morning arrives soft and gray, sunlight barely filtering through the narrow windows. You trudge through the cloisters, damp stones cool beneath your feet, and inhale the familiar mingling scents of herbs, ink, and beeswax. The monastery seems unusually still, as if holding its breath for what is about to unfold in the scriptorium. You move toward the heavy wooden door, heart quietly racing with anticipation. Inside, Odo greets you with a knowing smile, his eyes twinkling under the flickering candlelight. Today's exercise is intricate, crafting a narrative entirely in invisible ink, a story that will only reveal itself under the precise conditions of heat and light. The challenge is thrilling. It requires patience, creativity, and meticulous attention to the subtle reactions of the inks. You prepare your quill and study the parchment carefully, aware that each stroke carries weight and intention. You begin writing, the words vanishing as they form, leaving the parchment seemingly blank. Yet you can sense their presence, a quiet pulse beneath the surface. Layering different inks, you experiment with textures and reactions, some lines shimmering faintly with heat, others appearing only when pressed gently under a fingertip. The process is slow, meditative, almost hypnotic. Historians still debate whether the invisible ink in monasteries served mainly practical purposes, like secret correspondence, or if it was an artistic practice in itself. Perhaps it was both. You feel both truths as your story unfolds on the hidden layers, each line a delicate bridge between intention and discovery.
By midday, you pause to reflect on the messages hidden in previous manuscripts, the playful notes, subtle warnings, and humorous marginalia left by monks long gone. These hidden conversations stretch across centuries, a secret web of thought, creativity, and gentle rebellion woven quietly into the monastery's life. You smile at the continuity, the same curiosity, the same playful intelligence threading through time. Afternoon passes with careful experimentation, each revelation bringing satisfaction and quiet wonder. You watch the subtle reactions of the inks as they interact with heat, light, and touch. Letters emerge and retreat, like shy spirits teasing you into patience and observation. Other monks wander in and out, observing or quietly engaging in their own experiments, sharing unspoken understanding. As evening falls, candlelight dances across the parchment, revealing lines of your hidden narrative. The story, though invisible to the casual observer, has taken shape in your careful hands. You feel a deep connection to the monastery, to the centuries of inquisitive minds who walked these halls before you, leaving their whispers behind in ink that only the patient could uncover. The quiet of the scriptorium envelops you, broken only by the occasional rustle of parchment. You sense the monastery alive in ways invisible to outsiders, a web of secrets, laughter, and quiet knowledge held in the delicate pulse of invisible letters. The hidden world of ink and intention feels eternal, comforting, and endlessly fascinating.
The following morning arrives soft and gray, sunlight barely filtering through the narrow windows. You trudge through the cloisters, damp stones cool beneath your feet, and inhale the familiar mingling scents of herbs, ink, and beeswax. The monastery seems unusually still, as if holding its breath for what is about to unfold in the scriptorium. You move toward the heavy wooden door, heart quietly racing with anticipation. Inside, Odo greets you with a knowing smile, his eyes twinkling under the flickering candlelight. Today's exercise is intricate, crafting a narrative entirely in invisible ink, a story that will only reveal itself under the precise conditions of heat and light. The challenge is thrilling. It requires patience, creativity, and meticulous attention to the subtle reactions of the inks. You prepare your quill and study the parchment carefully, aware that each stroke carries weight and intention. You begin writing, the words vanishing as they form, leaving the parchment seemingly blank. Yet you can sense their presence, a quiet pulse beneath the surface. Layering different inks, you experiment with textures and reactions, some lines shimmering faintly with heat, others appearing only when pressed gently under a fingertip. The process is slow, meditative, almost hypnotic. Historians still debate whether the invisible ink in monasteries served mainly practical purposes, like secret correspondence, or if it was an artistic practice in itself. Perhaps it was both. You feel both truths as your story unfolds on the hidden layers, each line a delicate bridge between intention and discovery. By midday, you pause to reflect on the messages hidden in previous manuscripts, the playful notes, subtle warnings, and humorous marginalia left by monks long gone. These hidden conversations stretch across centuries, a secret web of thought, creativity,
and gentle rebellion woven quietly into the monastery's life. You smile at the continuity, the same curiosity, the same playful intelligence threading through time. Afternoon passes with careful experimentation, each revelation bringing satisfaction and quiet wonder. You watch the subtle reactions of the inks as they interact with heat, light, and touch. Letters emerge and retreat, like shy spirits teasing you into patience and observation. Other monks wander in and out, observing or quietly engaging in their own experiments, sharing unspoken understanding. As evening falls, candlelight dances across the parchment, revealing lines of your hidden narrative. The story, though invisible to the casual observer, has taken shape in your careful hands. You feel a deep connection to the monastery, to the centuries of inquisitive minds who walked these halls before you, leaving their whispers behind in ink that only the patient could uncover. The quiet of the scriptorium envelops you, broken only by the occasional rustle of parchment. You sense the monastery alive in ways invisible to outsiders, a web of secrets, laughter, and quiet knowledge held in the delicate pulse of invisible letters. The hidden world of ink and intention feels eternal, comforting, and endlessly fascinating.